One natural disaster could change your life forever. What can you do? Turn to AARP. We help older adults and their families prepare, respond, and recover with evacuation checklists to help you remember prescriptions and other essentials, information to help you avoid scammers, connections to on-the-ground emergency responders, and lots of other tips and tools. At AARP, we're here to help. Find us at aarp.org/local.
Weather always. How you doing, everybody? I'm Chief Meteorologist Denis Phillips. Heat's still the hot topic of weather conversation, right? Just smashed the previous record for rainfall in Tampa. Still a very nice day. We've got some clouds out there, even a couple of sprinkles as another front rolls through the area. Most of us wake up to sunshine and then very warm temperatures in the afternoon. For temperatures, they're going up and they're staying up. Really nice forecast, especially if you're planning on going to the beach or the pool. Rain chances very slim. Another beautiful day in store. It's going to bring us a very high chance of storms. Isolated showers across the area. Mother Nature likes to remind us that it isn't set by a calendar. We're always on it for you, just in case things begin to pop.
Streaming from the ABC Action Weather Center in Studio A, this is Denis Phillips Live, sponsored by AARP Tampa Bay.
How you doing, everybody? It is a Wednesday night edition of Denis Phillips Live. We're meeting tonight. Last night we had 4,000 or 5,000 people at any point in time. Whenever there's a big hurricane coming in and there's any kind of a threat, obviously the numbers go through the roof. Last week, we had tens of thousands of folks live. And so, you know, as we start to get a little clarity on where the track of Lee is going to go, I have a feeling that will probably be more of a focused kind of a forecast. But before we get into that, got a couple of things I want to throw out here in terms of some clerical stuff, some bookkeeping, if you will. So tomorrow night I will be off. I'm actually emceeing a really cool event at the Sand Pearl in Clearwater. It's called the Rose Awards, and it's an award ceremony for people within the service industry. You know, whether it's a hotel or a restaurant or whatever the case may be, and coworkers nominate people for these awards. You know, it can be a cook, it can be housekeeping, it can be security, it can be anything at all within that. And these folks, you know, they get to show up in a limo and the whole 9 yards. It's just a really, really awesome event. And I've had the privilege of emceeing it for the last several years. And so these awards are given based on the voting of the people on the board after nominations from the coworkers. So I'll be doing that tomorrow night. And will not be poolside. It will be in the banquet room. But so I figured I would do a DPL tonight because tomorrow I will be kind of slammed. And oh, by the way, tomorrow is the opening of the NFL football season too, with the Bills taking on the Jets. So I'm sure nobody will be watching anyway. Now, I do want to throw one other thing out here, and we've got some pretty in-depth, somewhat sciencey stuff to talk about Lee behind me, which is now a hurricane. But as you guys know, a lot of folks have been watching me. Used to be Twitter/X, and Facebook was always my platform. But my buddy Mike Boylan over at Mike's Weather Page is like, dude, you gotta expand a little bit. You gotta go onto TikTok. You gotta go onto YouTube. There's a lot of people out there. And I think we all know there's actually a lot of people on TikTok who do not like Facebook and vice versa, right? I see the animosity. But for whatever the case may be, a lot of my videos on TikTok, the last couple of videos, have stemmed from the comparison to me and Nick Saban, who is the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. So I am not a Alabama fan, Roll Tide. I have a lot of co-work. I'm a Penn State grad, so I mean, right off the bat, you don't know. But I will tell you, there's apparently just lots of discussions going on that he and I are the same person. So, so there is a picture of Nick Saban, kind of with the same disgusted look on his face when I see comments, people saying, are we going to have a Cat 6 hurricane? So kind of the same look. Yeah. So personally, I do kind of see it. I mean, there's some people like, nah, there's no comparison. Or, oh, yeah, it's the same person. I'll never look at you ever again. I'll always see Nick Saban in there. But, yeah. So, anyway, there's a look here. Let's do a close-up. Let's do a close-up, and then we can get this over with because this is all over. There's Nick Saban, all right? Okay? And here I am with the same look. I don't know, what do you think? I kind of see it. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I kind of see the comparison. So, somebody just said Mark Cuban. Mona says Mark Cuban. Well, I mean, Mark and I, we got the same color hair, I guess, for the time being. So anyway, there it is. Had to throw that out there because it's on TikTok a lot, and I thought that was kind of funny. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We have got a lot to talk about in terms of Lee, in terms of the threat to, or the potential threat for anybody on the East Coast. So we're going to go through a whole process here. So for folks who are new to our chat, and you know, we don't have the number of folks, we have 1,500 folks here. I'm sure there's more on streaming and whatnot. Again, last night we had 4,000. But I'm going to kind of go over a little bit about the tropical season in general before we get into the model data on what's going to happen with Lee. Okay, and by the way, tonight, I do not have my fantasy football draft going on at the same time, although my family's draft is at 9 o'clock. We do have a family draft tonight, and my 9-year-old daughter is now taking part for the first time. She wanted to be involved. She wants her own team, so Ryan is going to be involved. We now have 9 teams, because I have 6 kids. We have 9 teams in our fantasy football league. I have yet to win. My daughter Kendall won last year. I don't remember who won. Oh, my son Jake won the year before. My other son Brett won 3 years in a row. I have never tasted the sweet nectar of victory. Hopefully this year will be the year, okay? So let's go ahead and jump in, and that's at 9 o'clock. So we have plenty of time to get through this, through the 8 o'clock hour. All right, so here's a look at Hurricane Lee. Winds of 75 miles an hour. Now, if you look closely, you can kind of see this is being sheared. Matter of fact, the center of this storm is on the left side of that blob of convection. It looks like it's been trying to form an eye wall around it for a while, but at this point, still not able to do so. So, we got Abby, who is a Penn Stater as well. So there is a look at a somewhat sheared system that has not been able to really wrap around itself at this point, but we believe that it will over the next 24 to 36 hours. So here's the track as of 5 o'clock. Here's the 5 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center, and it has not budged for the last 36 to 48 hours. And you know what? It's not going to budge over the next 4 or 5 days either. This is a track that is absolutely locked in. Now, people will say, well, then, okay, if you say it's going to lock in, why are we looking at, you know, an area here where the cone is much larger than right here? Okay, well, here's the answer to that. This track is not a hand-drawn track. It is not a track that shows you the margin of error higher or lower based on an individual storm than any other. All this is a track with the average margin of error incremental to time over the next 5 days. And typically the margin of error on day 4 or day 5 is around 100 nautical miles, give or take. Sometimes it's even like 120, 125. So this is not somebody saying, oh, look, they don't know what's going to happen in day 4 or day 5 because look how much larger the margin of error is out here. No, 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 no. This is just purely mathematical formula. That's all it is in terms of the average in the last 5 years of what the margin of error has been with any kind of a storm. Okay? So there you go. So there it is. So let's go from there. These are the names of the storms. We are already to L. So remember about 4 weeks ago when the NHC or when NOAA came out and said, well, we're going to have this number of storms, and there's like, wow, that's going to take a lot of storms to get there. We are already at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 named storms And oh, by the way, that's getting pretty close to the low end of their prediction. And we have the entire month of September and October, as well as November. So there you go. We are clearly going to get rather far into, now a lot of these storms people didn't even know existed. Who remembers Jose? Who remembers Katia? We all remember Adalia. But who remembers Gert? Who remembers Harold? These were so quick that they really came in and out. By the way, the impacts to the islands, I think, will be negligible, Ort, and we will talk about that in just a minute. But I really think this stays north of the islands, maybe some tropical storm force winds in the northern islands. Should you cancel your cruise? Okay, what is the 16th? No, you should not cancel your cruise. You'll be fine, Shannon. You'll be fine. We are in an El Nino. For those of you who don't know, El Nino is just a body of warm water off the coast of South America that has a very large impact on the Pacific and the Atlantic hurricane season. The Pacific will get more active because of all the warm water. The Atlantic traditionally gets less active because of shearing upper-level winds. Now, ironically enough, in the wintertime, the subtropical jet, which is the red arrows, gets far more active as opposed to the polar jet, which you see up north. And a more active subtropical jet means a more active winter season for severe weather. No threat to the Gulf Coast, Brenda. And you guys, so there's a lot of new folks. Emily, how you doing? So, I'm going through kind of a process here. I promise you, if you hang in for the next 15 minutes or so, you will have everything you need to know about Lee, but I want to get to this point. So the subtropical jet will be more active in the wintertime. That could be a very good thing because we are in a drought in Florida in many spots, and it's not getting any better anytime soon. But what else happens? With an El Nino, there are stronger upper-level winds, which means there are fewer storms expected. Well, then why in the world did we get an uptick in the prediction from NOAA, even in an El Nino, as we go into September and October? Because the waters are so warm that we believe that would offset the negative influences from the El Nino. And so far, that's exactly what's happened. Now, traditionally, the Caribbean gets shut down in an El Nino year. You have significantly fewer storms in the Caribbean, and you have still more in the tropical Atlantic. Now, for the Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean storms are much more volatile. Now, again, Idalia formed in the northern Caribbean, so really not the main Caribbean, like right on the fringe of the Gulf, and it was Pacific moisture that got drawn up anyway. So my point is, and I will show you this in a couple minutes, the Caribbean is still shut down for business. So that means it is a far less likely impact on a Caribbean storm moving into the Gulf with this kind of a pattern than if we were neutral or in a La Nina. Thank you, Laura. So that is a look at El Nino. Let's look at hurricane formation, all right? For the folks who are seeing the storms and they're like, oh my gosh, it's gonna turn. They all turn. Or let's talk about things, all right? First of all, hurricanes form to cool the atmosphere. It leads to convection, vertical motion, and clouds, all right? And then you get moist layers at about 15,000 feet up, which continues for tropical storm development. Now, when you have an El Nino year, at about 20,000 feet, you see upper level winds that can often cut off that upward motion and limit the amount of development. Love chocolate covered strawberries, Stephanie. I'm glancing over at your questions from time to time. So, when you have an El Nino, one of the big factors, vertical motion, is really inhibited by developing. But here's something else to remember. People love to say, well, wait a minute. Why don't we just throw something in the hurricane and cause it to go away? First of all, you don't want to do that because hurricanes are Mother Nature's way of actually cooling the atmosphere. So if you don't have a natural mechanism to cool things down, things will get even hotter. In addition, you get the folks, well, I think you just throw an atomic bomb in a hurricane and that'll get rid of it. Well, actually, all that would happen is you would have a nuclear or a radioactive hurricane, which in my take, is probably a little worse than just a regular hurricane. A radioactive hurricane is probably worse. I'm going to give you a hot take right now. It's worse than a regular one. So you don't want to throw an atomic bomb in a hurricane. Love the passion, good idea, but not really. Okay, let's go back. So, as we continue, all right, the velocity of winds must not change significantly with heights, all right? That can cause an unfavorable atmosphere. The magic number for hurricane development is usually 80 degrees or warmer. It's what we always call the magic number. We have water temperatures in the upper 80s to nearly 90 degrees, right? And Sean is still looking for the 540 line, which is the freezing line. I agree with you, Teresa. No radioactive hurricanes, please. That is my vote, all right? So, Long Island, hang in there. You don't have nearly as much to worry about as you may think at this point. This, I think immediately folks think of Sandy. All right, I'll get to that. I promise you I'll get to that. But we've got some time, and I really want to go over this stuff. Tropical depression, you do have organization, winds less than 38 miles an hour. When they go higher than that, 39 to 73, you then have a tropical storm. When the winds go stronger than 73, you have a hurricane, which is what Lee is right now. And Lee is expected to remain a hurricane for a long time. The season is in the peak right now. 1/3 of all named storms develop in the month of September. And a sizable number form in October, and most of those are typically in the Caribbean, in the Gulf. The Atlantic starts to shut down in October. And you see that little uptick? See that little uptick in October? That little bump right here? It is almost always Gulf of Mexico or Northern Caribbean storms. So for the Bay Area and for Florida on the West Coast, quite often we are more concerned in mid-October than we would be even in September, because the majority of September storms that form in the Atlantic, in the tropical Atlantic, stay on the east side. And even further than that, by far, here's a key point, by far, more than 50% of all storms that form in the tropical Atlantic, where Lee is, stay north of the islands and curve away without bothering any landmass. Sometimes Bermuda gets in the way, but that's about it. So on at least 50 to 60% of the occasions, these storms that form where Lee is, and where many of them are, in the month of September, curve around high pressure and end up in the open waters of the Atlantic, AKA fish storms, known as fish storms. All right? So that is important to remember, because if I were a betting man, and I've been known to be a betting man from time to time, at this point right now, I would put a future on this will not impact the U.S. coast directly. That would be my future. Now that's 12, 13 days down the road, and a lot can and will change, and we'll get into that. But if you were to say, Dennis, right now you're going to tell me, do you think it's going to impact the U.S. directly or not? I would say no. Statistically speaking, 60% of all storms miss the U.S. anyway, coming in from that angle, and there's a lot of other factors coming into play as well. So that is the early thinking. But 12 days later, if this does make landfall up north, don't say, well, you said 12 days ago. Look, again, a lot can change in 12 days, but you want me to go out there right now with my early thoughts? Those are my early thoughts. All right? So, and then I look over and Mike says, this is why you don't boat in the Bermuda Triangle. See, I miss all your comments, and I'll be honest, your comments make these chats for me. And I just, I miss them because I'm actually focusing on what I'm talking about, which is really distressing. But I am going to go back and look. Like RJ asked Miss Cleo. So anyway, the front right maximum hurricane impact is the northeast quadrant. That's where most of the surge will occur and the worst of the eye wall will occur. So this is the four parts of a hurricane. The left side is weakest, but still dangerous, obviously, especially if the eye wall is pretty intense. Here's your scale. Category 1 through 5. 1 will not cause structural damage unless you're in a mobile home. Usually Floridians just kind of scoff at a 1, at least the wind. 2 gets a little bit stronger. You will have some roof issues with tiles and whatnot. Typically, you don't lose roofs on a 2. 3, though, is when you start getting real. It's known as a major hurricane. And again, Lee is supposed to go strong 4 and possibly even 5. So you can see by a Cat 4 and 5, the water right at landfall or to the east of landfall is extreme. We hide from the wind, we run from the water, we all know that. And then Cat 5, the house is gone, if it's that kind of a house on the water. And so is the flags, for that matter. So 5 is the real deal. Storm surge, as many Floridians learned with Idalia, storm surge can be a real issue. You hide from the wind, you run from the water. You not only have a water rise, but you also have waves on top of that water rise. And that can easily be in excess of 20 feet. And this is going to be a major hurricane. So there we go. This gave you a little bit of background on what a hurricane is, how they form, and whatnot. Now, where is this one going? Let's jump right in. We're going to start with the spaghetti models. I will take these full. All right? Spaghetti models are just individual model runs of different models, the operational runs, to give you an idea of kind of what the models are thinking. Now, someone may say, oh my heavens, what is this line right here that's straight and going right into Florida? That is the extrapolated line. That is nothing more than drawing a straight line from the current track and extending it farther out. That is not what this storm is going to do. It's what the majority of storms do not do. This one is going to curve. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind this is going to curve. 0 doubt. The only doubt would be, does it curve earlier or does it curve later? All right? Well, at this point, that is still not set in stone. But in my opinion, and since you're here for my opinion, all right, well, this is a weather chat. We're going to talk, this is not the National Hurricane Center's forecast. In my opinion, there is no way that this storm is directly impacting the state of Florida. We are past that with a number of really significant weather events over the next 6 to 7 days that will inevitably turn this to the north. Now, if it slows down, could that turn be later? Yes. But ultimately, what is going to turn this storm is a weakening in the ridge and troughs of low pressure and fronts coming in from the East Coast to weaken that. And I don't see any way that that doesn't happen. Calling them like I see them. I don't see any way that happens. So if we were to take Florida off the table, which in my mind I can, look, you know, I do weather. I've been wrong before. It can happen. And if I'm wrong, I'll be like, you know what? In 3 days when we see the models change, but I don't see it happening. There's so many what ifs, and you guys know me, a lot of y'all do. Look, I don't deal with a lot of what ifs. I deal with what I feel right now, and if I have to reevaluate down the road, I will. Usually I haven't had to, but in this particular case, this is one I'm extremely confident Florida is not an issue with this storm, outside of some surge and some increased surf and some waves out of this on the East Coast. So I'm taking Florida off the table right now. I'm taking Georgia off the table. I'm taking South Carolina off the table because I really think this is a storm that is inevitably going to curve. Now, what about the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast? Can't do that yet. Can't take that one off the table for a number of reasons. First of all, you're talking 9 or 10 days out. There are going to be so many little subtle changes to the atmosphere from the Mid-Atlantic to the Northeast that'll have a big impact. Because remember, we've said this so many times, a subtle change down here would be a much bigger change up here. It's the whole driving your car, having your hands on the steering wheel right here. Just a little bit of a turn right now isn't much of a turn. But in 1,000 miles, you'll be in the other part of the ocean. So we are simply incapable of knowing where this is going to go once we get past day 6 or 7. So in my opinion, yes, we can write off Florida and the Carolinas. But let's talk about those possibilities. And we're going to start with the GFS. Starting from day 7 on, you are going to see these models going back and forth like crazy for the next week. So if you're in Florida and you're like, do I need to keep my eye on it? In my opinion, no. I think you're good. If you live in Georgia, I think you're good. If you live in South Carolina, I think you're good. You live from the Outer Banks northward, that's another story. Not saying it's going to hit those areas, but I'm saying we can't write it off yet. All right? So let's go and look at the GFS, and then we'll look at the Euro, and I think that'll cover it. Based on this current track, the worst that I see, by the way, I'll say one other thing. The center has jogged as of 5 o'clock a little bit more to the north and a little more to the west. So that takes it even a little farther north away from the islands. So for folks in the Leeward Islands, for folks in the Windward Islands, for Puerto Rico, for Hispaniola, for the Dominican, for Haiti, for all those areas, I think it's a glancing blow. I think maybe some tropical storm force winds, worst case. At that point, if this takes more of a southern track, worst case. Hurricane Center is keeping this on the southern edge of their consensus models. Most of the models are much farther north than the official NHC track, but they're keeping it on the south. Why? Probably because they want the islands to take this seriously in case it were to shift a little bit more to the south. But right now, all I see for the islands, southern section, not as strong, tropical storm force winds. That is all that I see right now. Okay? Let's go back. Here's the GFS. I'm just going to go ahead and play this loop. All right? Let's start it from 0 and play it. Here is your GFS, hashtag cha-ching. There is your hurricane. All right? GFS takes it well north of the islands. All right? This is just one model run. I'm just showing you the differences. There's the GFS. I'm going to do something. Let's stop this right here at 132 hours. There it is. Let's see what the Euro has. About the same. Euro's a little bit more to the south, a little slower, but not very different. So there's a ton of agreement through this amount of time. All right, let's keep going. All right, we start to see that northward motion. Then it all boils down to positioning of high pressure dropping in from the north, right? Dropping in from the north, and a front weakening the positioning of that high. And there's actually going to be a couple of troughs that are going to be involved in this. So what you're going to see is a system that is going to try to go north, and then at some point potentially being pushed back toward the west a little bit. Potentially. There's absolutely no reliable model data on this far out. And there you go. So we stop it right here. This is still several hundred miles east of Cape Cod and east of the Jersey Shore with this run. It all depends, and by the way, let's see where the Euro is on this one. I'm curious. Okay, so here's the GFS. Where's the Euro? I have a feeling it's going to be a lot different. Yeah, look at the GFS, how much farther north it is. Look at the Euro. Still well offshore, but much, much slower. So as we continue the GFS, it continues to pull away from the U.S. and North America in general. Oh, hold on a second. I got to do something. Stand by. I just realized something, and my kids are frantically messaging me right now because I just realized I forgot to change the time on our fantasy draft. So I'm going to have to redo this in a minute. Wait a minute. Stand by. Priorities come into play here. Oh, boy. I was wondering why the phone's ringing so much. Hold on. Stand by. This will only take... Well, if you're watching on a streaming app, by the way, that's really the key. Right now, all the major models keep it. Oh, yeah, I do have to redo this. All the major models keep this well to the east. But, oh, man, stop. All right, I'm going to have to redo this. I will tell my family I will redo this in a minute. So, we ran into some issues. I was wondering, I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Why is my family so freaking out about this? All right, anyway, so there you go. So there we go. There is back to the models on that, showing a track well east of the United States. Now, is that even remotely set in stone? It is not. Anyone from the Outer Banks of the Carolinas northward is still going to have to watch this particular system. They're going to have to. Okay? So, at this point in time, that's all we have. North of the islands, maybe tropical storm force winds in the islands, bypassing Florida, except for some swells and some waves, bypassing Georgia, bypassing South Carolina. From the Outer Banks northward, it's too early to tell. The models are keeping everything well offshore, but that could change. Look, there's no way 10 or 11 days out we're going to have any accuracy on all the little subtleties that could draw this a little bit closer. But I will tell you, in my opinion, if this were to impact the U.S., the farther north you live, the more likely that would occur. The farther south you are, the less likely. It's as simple as that. All right? So there you go. That is, that's it. We will be back. I'll be back on Friday with an update. I'm off tomorrow again. And we'll have maybe a little bit better idea. Probably not. It's going to be 2 days out. It'll probably be a major hurricane. I doubt we'll have any clear ideas on north of the Outer Banks into the Northeast, but we'll be 2 days more. Maybe we'll have a little bit better data. So again, that's about it, folks. Thanks for stopping by. I hope this was somewhat helpful. And I will be back Friday night at 7:30 with another edition of Denis Phillips Live. And again, we'll have 2 days under our belt, so a little bit better idea of where it's going. But I still think you're middle of next week before we actually know whether this is going to be any kind of a threat to areas from, say, the Mid-Atlantic, the Jersey Shore, up toward New England. At this point, the answer is no, but it is way, way too early to be definitive one way or the other. All right? There you go. But for Florida, the answer is no. For Georgia and South Carolina, the answer is no. That's where we are right now. You guys have a great night, and we'll see you on Friday night's edition of Denis Phillips Live. See you guys.
One natural disaster could change your life forever. What can you do? Turn to AARP. We help older adults and their families prepare, respond, and recover with evacuation checklists to help you remember prescriptions and other essentials, information to help you avoid scammers, connections to on-the-ground emergency responders, and lots of other tips and tools. At AARP, we're here to help. Find us at aarp.org/local.